Welcome, everyone. How are you this afternoon? Am I too far in your way? Is it okay? I'll back up just a little bit so you can see the beauty of Shawn Dougherty. He is a beautiful man.
My wife is not here. She's the beauty.
She is the beauty. But you are the charm. And you have a great laugh. How has your day been, everybody? Been good? It's also it's a Homestead Festival and weight loss clinic.
I'm just going to leave it there. Yeah,
because we sweat so much, we come back thinner. I appreciate everybody sticking with us even when it's hard, and we're very blessed. It could be worse. It could be a lot worse, so we're so thankful.
We realize this is the napping session, so any men who need to fall asleep, that's okay.
Well, everybody, we've all had our own times where we've given our own talks and our own lectures, and I've got to catch a couple of their lectures, and it's been a real blessing to me. But to get together and talk this afternoon, for me to be able to ask a few questions to these men that I admire, and that sometimes, people mentor you. Some of them mentor you on purpose, and you get to be around them, and sometimes people mentor you, and they don't even know they're mentoring you. And these are some guys that do that a lot with a lot of different people. So let me introduce them. You can give a round of applause. From up in Ohio, I'm actually going to talk about them tonight. They've got a great story, and I'm just going to tell a little bit part of it. But Shawn and Beth have been here, and such a blessing to us. This is Shawn Dougherty. I've been hearing Butch's name for a couple of years, and what I really loved about it is I would run into people, and they would say, "Have you met Butch yet?" And I would say, "No, not yet." And they would say, "Oh, you got to meet Butch." And you don't get that a lot for a man. And I thought he's either real soft to hug or a sweet, sweet man with a lot of knowledge and stuff to share. And it turns out he's soft to hug, and he's got all the knowledge and stuff too. Butch Tindell, please. The one that kind of led me here in the first place, we watched his videos, we read his books for a long time. He invited me to his house, and then I showed up and spent a whole afternoon, and he wasn't even there. Years before I met him, I came to his house and walked around his fields because he lets people come. And so Joey and I, when we were on tour one time, we showed up and just wandered around taking pictures of his chicken tractors, and came home and tried to build and be like him. And over time, God let our paths cross, and he's been a blessing to us. Joel Salatin. So this panel in particular is going to just have a little bit of a different aspect of homesteading, which is something that I'm really passionate about, which is the home in homesteading. And everybody could talk about all of these different subjects, but I've sort of broken them up a little bit with the idea that maybe they could share certain aspects, and they can chime in on anything. I could start, and then you could just decide you want to talk about something else, and that's totally fine. But it's really about building a sustainable life, not just a sustainable garden and sustainable food system, but for me, it's a sustainable life, and that includes our families and our community and so many, our children and education and birth and all these things. And so within these guys, they've done that. They're not only growing healthy gardens and animals, but they really have healthy families, and they're part of healthy communities. And that's my favorite part. When I'm at Joel Salatin's house, I love to go through and see all the systems that he has in place. But the one that I'm more interested in is, look how many things are all over his desk. Look how many books are on his shelf. Look how he lives and he doesn't have any air conditioning. Look how he treats everybody. Look how his family relates to each other. His mother, who just turned 100, lives right next to him, and they take care of her. It's how Joel lives that inspires me. It's how Butch has chosen to live his life in Texas and the people he's around that inspires me. And then when I went to Ohio, to Shawn and Beth's house, their house burned to the ground. just maybe 2 weeks before that, but their home was healthy and vibrant. And it was incredible. Their children, it's something. And so I want to talk about that, and we'll start with you, Joel. Is you're famous for? Can you give them you probably already said it, which is your purpose, your mission statement?
To develop economically, ecologically, and emotionally enhancing agricultural prototypes and facilitate their duplication throughout the world.
Yes, sir. You had me at prototype. Actually, Joel is too smart for me. And if you had to boil that down, Joel, what would that be? A simplified version.
Well, we want to do successful farming and not just for ourselves, but we have a very outboard focus that if we have something that works, we want to do everything we can to facilitate its duplication for other people.
Yes, sir, and help everybody understand.
And help everybody
create
else.
Systems that don't just work at your place; they work anywhere and everywhere. Right. I came last August. Joel invited me, and I went to his PIDS workshop, which is a intensive discovery seminar for 2 days.
Polyface Intensive Discovery Seminar.
Yes.
PIDS. PIDS. You ought to make sure you get the D in there.
PIDS. And it was incredible for 2 days, morning from sunup to sunset. It was their apprentices, their stewards, and all hands on deck showing us how all the systems are integrated together. But my favorite part, he's known, people who know him call him the pastor of the pastor. And tomorrow he's actually going to be in this tent, or maybe B. We're going to do a church service at 9 o'clock, and Joel's going to share the word and share a message with us all. So if you can come join us, he'll be the pastor of the pastor then for sure. But one of the things I love about Joel, when at the end of this thing, when it was over, he was talking to us, and he's not only the pastoring of all of this vision that he has in sharing this information, but he's got a lot of people around him. He's got a lot of young people. He's got so many, in particular, the people that he's pastoring. And you said something at the end of it, which was, at your age, and he was really choked up, and he was sharing with everybody what it meant. Can you share that? And then what that means to you now in the context of all of this, when most farmers don't have that?
So, I deal with a lot of farmers around the world, and I'm pushing 70. I know I don't look it. It's been but most farmers my age that I run into are lonelier than they've ever been in their life. Their kids are grown and gone, and it's the wife and I, and the aches and pains, and it's harder to get up and down off the tractor. And I don't have the energy I did, and they're seeing this kind of this black hole at the end of this career, and they've stewarded this land, they've loved this farm, they've done this thing, and they don't have that second pair of hands to hold up a board on the fence. A lot easier to nail a board on a fence if you got another pair of hands to hold up the other end, those kinds of things. And so I just am. At this stage, to be surrounded by these young, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, enthusiastic, loyal, faithful to a fault, young people who go move that mountain. Hey, when you want it done, in 1 hour or two. And so for me, about half the time I can't get through this, and half the time I do. I think I'm going to get through it today, but to have the blessing of being at this age of my life and this time when most farmers are so lonely, to be surrounded by all these delightful, sharp young people is just it's unspeakable. It's just unspeakable. And Teresa and I, early on when we got married, how we were talking about. Stephen Covey in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he says, start with the end in view. And I think, when we got married and we said, we came back to the farm full time, we said, what's our vision? But that was before we had this mission statement that's really nice and, articulate. was one of the things that we both wanted. We wanted to age with young people, either our own or others or both, around us. And so we set about early on building an enterprise that was attractive emotionally and economically for the young generation. And we're now reaping the benefits of that long time of thinking about 40 years in advance before they came upon us. Too many people, when they hit 60, something happens when you hit 60 and you realize, you'll hit it, Rory, trust me, very soon. And it's like it's that decade, that mortality stares you in the face, and suddenly I get calls routinely from 60-year-old plus farmers that are in this predicament, and now it's not too late, but practically it is. Practically it is too late to rectify that, and so it's tough. So I'm very thankful, very grateful, very blessed.
What would your advice be? Because most of us, a lot of people just like hope they're not going to be alone at the end. We just hope it won't be that way, but it takes more than hope.
Yeah.
What would your advice be to cultivate that?
Well, so I would say the first thing you need to cultivate is a sense of abundance. So many farmers come to this, well, I don't have enough rainfall, I don't have enough soil, I don't have enough fertility, I don't have enough customers, I don't have enough business. There's a million things I don't have enough of. Our lives are dominated by not enough. If you want to really drill down on this, read Brene Brown's book, Daring Greatly. And she has this whole thing about, we get up in the morning, we didn't get enough sleep. We go to bed at night, we didn't have a long enough day. We live on this edge of not enough. And so I think the first thing is to cultivate in your life and really nourish this idea that there is abundance. It's not limited. It's not scarce. It's abundance. And then the thing that we did with our kids as they came into teenage years, we were very clear with them, said, we will be your best cheerleaders no matter what you want to be, or what you want to do. But if you don't want this farm, and you're going to make that decision pretty sooner, not later, if you're not interested in it, we're going to actively find, romance, and recruit other young people who will inherit this place, because this is bigger than us. It's bigger than our family. It's God's legacy that we have invested in our pilgrimage. And that wasn't extortion. It wasn't a threat.
No.
It was just simply stating a fact of how I had it with Dad. When I came back to the farm full time, we made polyphase. So we were there 20 years before there was a polyphase. Okay, it was basically a glorified homestead. We milked a couple cows, raised a couple pigs, had some chickens, big garden, canned, kind of ate off the land. But it wasn't a going concern. And when I came back, Dad was an accountant, and he said, well, we need to incorporate for tax reasons and liability and all the reasons that you have a business. And he said, we'll just be Salatin Incorporated. And boy, I remember that because we didn't cross too much. But boy, that was one where I really crossed him. I said, no. I said, this is way bigger than our family. And that was before I was even making a living on the farm. But I had a vision of where this was going to go. I said, this is bigger than there might be a day when a Salatin isn't running this place. And I wanted it to be open-ended, so that it was a whosoever will option, that if we came to that day and there wasn't a Salatin running it, that there wouldn't be a problem as a brand.
Wonderful. Well, Shawn, in the same way, on his farm, created these systems where not only is he pasturing and bringing up young farmers that go on and do incredible things, but he and his family. And you have a very, very large family. How many kids do you have?
8.
8 kids. How many boys? 6.
6. 6.
Some of them are here. Be careful.
That's right.
How many of the kids are with you? All 4 boys? All 6 boys?
The 6 boys are here, and 2 daughters-in-law, and a grandson.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I find fascinating when I came to visit Shawn and Beth is that they have a wonderful homestead there in Ohio that they built on a hill, not the best land in the world, and they built an incredible home and life there. But it's their children that really fascinate me. When you meet them, they don't feel like most of the other children. And when I say children, you're talking about mid-30s or so, right, down to
37 to 16.
37 to 16. But they're not children. And I'm going to guess when they were 13, they weren't children. There was an Amish guy, I listened to a talk the other day, and he was saying in this talk that the word teenager didn't come into existence until the 1950s. This whole phenomenon of kids have this whole time frame and what do we do with them and all that, that's a new phenomenon. And with your children, as they've grown up, the men are men, the women are women, and they all know so much and they're still so young. How do you cultivate that? You know, because my guess is you didn't have the same upbringing to where you had it completely inside you the way that your boys do and your girls do.
No, and as a parent, what do we know? What do we know that worked? What do we know that didn't work? And if you were talking to my kids, they would. If I said this is the thing, they'd say that wasn't it, Dad. So I don't know exactly what it was. I mean, things that were very important to us is that we do them. And I think that that's a lot of it, that we did not farm things out, that if we had a challenge on the farm, we figured it out. And if we were going to grow food, we did it. And so we didn't know a lot of the things that we were doing, and we learned those skills in the process of doing them. So we're getting ready to add an addition onto our house, and we say, okay, we would ask around, we'd do some research, we'd talk to our neighbors, but we would try and figure that out as opposed to hiring somebody in to do that and solve that problem for us. So I think, and they were home educated. They went all the way through. And the greatest thing that I think they got out of home education, I mean, my wife was the primary teacher. I was the principal, and we would fight. She wanted them in classroom. I wanted them out on the farm. And I saw the farm work as every bit of an education as the other. But the thing that they got was they are incredible problem solvers. They can't see a problem that they can't solve, and they love doing that. They love challenges. They love hard work, and they love to get together. Just one example, we had Thanksgiving Thanksgiving was coming up, and my son had an addition that he was getting ready to put onto his house, and he was having to pull off the old addition and tear it down. And he said, Dad, I'm not sure how this is going to go. And I said, well, let me talk to the boys. And so all of us went up to Thomas's, and he had pulled it off. And in about 3 days, it was 3 stories. We had framed it all in, put it up. And I had to get out of the way because they are now really good at this stuff. And they'd say, Dad, go sit down. We'll do this. And I think being in that place is a great place, too. I love being told to go sit down.
Did all of you homeschool your kids?
Yes.
Did you too, Joe? So I talked earlier.
It's good if they say go sit down and don't say shut up.
Yeah.
Well, they do that, too. So my son, so we have a carpenter, we have general contractor, so all my kids in the rebuild of the house, they're doing it all. And one of them is an architect. And so when we were getting ready to do it, my wife said to him, I want exactly the same house that we had before. And he said, Mom, we'll talk. And he has designed on the same footprint something that is a world-class building or world-class structure that really thinks through how should milk come into the house? How should it move upstairs? How should it do this? How should it do that? So we're really thinking through all the things. Instead of taking a 100-year-old house and making it fit, we're able to start at the beginning and say, okay, we've been doing this for 20, 25, 30 years. Now let's fix all of the problems in the house. And they've been very conscious of doing that. And they're just really good at it. So.
It's not. I think it's easier for us to look around and go, "You just got a great batch of kids. You haven't. I didn't get that batch." But I don't think it's that way. No means no, and empowering your kids means empowering them, even if they do it wrong. All those kinds of things.
It
It's
does
purposeful.
mean getting out of their way.
Yes.
It does mean working with them and trying to find the thing that they really naturally like to do, and then encouraging that, finding that. But it also means you do have to work as a family. Mm-hmm. We've got big projects. We've got to do the hay. We've got to do the butchering. Everybody's on board. There isn't an opt-out. There isn't a go sit in a screen. And
It's very. I asked Joel today or when I picked him up at the airport yesterday, we were talking about when things got very difficult, which they could. They got very difficult. He was having a conversation with someone, and they said there were two options. Things get very, very difficult, and I'll have you. But one was go off on your own, and you with your family or something, and find your own little quiet place and survive. Figure out how to survive. Number two, be with some people. But we talked about when that moment happens and you try to be with some people, it's way too late. That's a process, which we'll come back to in a minute. But Butch lives in Texas in a community of about 1,500 people, right? Would you say?
Yes, sir.
1,500 people that have been doing it. They have been doing community for 51 years. 3 generations or 4, maybe your fourth?
We're on the 4th.
On the 4th generation. And I'm not talking about a bunch of people that just agree to live near each other and help each other chop wood. I'm talking about they've all decided to die to their own wills and be together in a way I've never seen before. From birth to death and everything, and to submit to each other in ways that's just unheard of. And that's why your spirit showed up before you did, because it's so bright and so light. Could you shed a little bit of light on the idea of community? And then Joel, maybe you could follow that up by saying, when the time comes, it's going to be too late. Whatever. And I'm not a doomsdayer, but I'm just saying now is a great time to begin. We don't have 51 years to begin community, but share a little bit of your experience and any encouragement you might have for people trying to find community.
Well, I think we look at the word community and what is it? Common unity. So we don't just look for the places of commonality. We actually have to come to the place where, I hope you don't mind if I use scripture a little bit, but esteem one another's better than ourselves. Submit one to another. And if you're going to live in community, you're continually faced with the human nature. And we all have it. My failures, my inadequacies are painfully obvious to me and much more obvious to those around me. And to come to grips with that and to be willing to say to someone else, please speak into my life. Please help me with the things. I've got a wart on my nose and I can't see it. To be able to have that kind of a relationship. And to have that kind of relationship, it really comes down to love. Can I have that kind of love? And I'll be honest with you, I don't. I don't have that kind of love. It takes something well beyond me, something transcendent to me. And that's what holds us together, is that love that's transcendent to ourselves. To come to the place where I'm going to say, not my will, but thy will be done, Lord. And then that love, can come. I can come to the place, I'll use another scriptural term, come to the place of repentance and dying to myself and seeing that that's what's going to bring about commonness, common unity. We can be of one heart. We're one in our failures, our human nature, but we can come together on the basis of that love one for another. That didn't come from us, it came from above.
Well, people love the idea that we can serve each other and be there for each other. But you guys are at a level that's just, it's unusual. The amount of love, the way that they serve each other is very unusual. You actually have it, I read that when you're trying to die to yourself and really serve the people around me, if my ego, which shows up all the time, if my ego shows up, I tell you and all my friends around you, if it shows up, I read this. Could you finish the statement? You have permission to. Yeah, well, it's in a book I read. You have permission to shoot on sight, which just what it means is you give everyone permission to come to you and say, "I think you're out of line," in love. Now we don't want that. We don't want to be accountable to anyone at any time. And that's what's fascinating to me is you give it away on purpose and then you ask them.
Yes, sir, that's true. But also the background to that is that I know my brother and I know he truly loves me.
Yes, sir.
He cares for me.
Yeah.
And so I can do that.
Yeah.
I can do that. I can, it says greater love has this than no man that he lay down his life for another. That's what we're called to do as fathers. As fathers, to lay down our lives, to serve, and be what we're supposed to be for our children, for our wives. And every step of the way, we've got places where we can lay down our lives. And when you see that love, when you create a culture, I won't say create, when you allow God to develop that culture in your midst, it really isn't that, it's hard, but it's not insurmountable.
Yes, sir. Joel, would you expand a little on what the conversation you were telling me about?
Yeah, so I had this fascinating conversation with these two retiring Special Forces military guys, and they were career guys. They were getting out, and they were convinced that the wheels are going to fall off. That we're going to be EMP'd or CBDC, central bank digital current. Okay. There's all these scenarios, and so we had this wide-ranging conversation, and the things that came out of it, they had their wives on. It was a conference call. They were in Texas. I was at home in Virginia, and it was fun for me. I learned a lot just talking to guys who had spent their life doing what ifs. This is what they do is what if this scenario? What if this scenario? How do you handle this? Blah blah blah. So they were really trained in that strategy, and what concluded from the conversation was there's really only two options if the wheels really fall off. One is to go to Wyoming or Idaho, live in a cave, and be a mountain man, and trap and shoot and live off the land. The other is to get relationally and geographically proximate to an eclectic group of people that know how to grow things, fix things, and build things in community. I'll give you one guess which one the wives like more. Wives like number two more than number one. But here was the interesting thing, the epiphany for me was, and them, was what is common. Here are two extremes. One is like hyper-individuality, and the other is hyper-submission, if you will, okay? These are two opposites of the one thing that was common between both of them, the lead time to create it. You can't go out and live in a cave and trap and live off the land like a hermit without knowing how to trap and shoot and butcher and cook and make fire from sticks and whatever, any more than you can go and build trust in a community and develop a background of unconditional love in a community. Those take time, and so it's kind of like the Arbor Foundation says, when's the best day to plant a tree? 20 years ago. What's the next best time? 10 years ago. The point is, start now, and that's part of what this whole festival is about. Is starting now. We've still got bank accounts. We can still use checkbooks. We can still, we're free to drive around. We can still get gas, so to start now. So congrats on all of you that have invested now in that in that whatever insurance policy for yourself and your family. And if nothing collapses, it's still a better way to live. That's the thing. You know, if the Bible weren't true, it's still the greatest rule book of life. So that's kind of where we came to.
Joel told me a long time ago, he said, once you begin to question where your food comes from, you begin to question everything. It happens pretty much every time. And I took that to mean, I took it to understand because it happened right after that. It was easy to begin to question, are my kids being educated the best way possible? Is the health system that's out there really after my best interest? And then just keeps going, is all that. It just keeps going and going and going. But I found myself thinking about this idea that what it really comes down to is the idea that once you begin to take responsibility for where your food comes from and feeding your family, you'll start to want to take responsibility for all of these other areas. And in your own lives, if you have any stories about that, where one led to another in a natural way that could be encouraging to folks, where sometimes you just begin, and that's really what this, when we first were talking about doing this festival, Joel and these guys do some other big festivals, and Joel coined the phrase homestead evangelism, which I love that a lot. And the point was, there are some people who only want to come and see Kevin Costner, which I do not blame them. But while they're here, they may say, what's that? Why do you have baby chicks there? And did you grow that? And they actually might discover something else. And so it's our own seeker church for homesteading. And it really has been a wonderful thing, because a lot of us, we begin where we begin. And just beginning is the biggest thing. But in your own lives, have you seen that something led you to where you are and to where you're going? Sometimes even as we get older, we find a new one that we hadn't thought of before that we want to start taking part in.
Yeah, one of our very early steps was home birth. That my wife was all for all medicine, whatever would kill the pain, it didn't matter. And then we had some dear friends who had just had a baby, and they'd had it at a midwife clinic, and came over to tell Beth about it. And the way that they told it, it was this incredible adventure, this wonderful thing where you're in control, and the medical system, and we went through that, and it was a wonderful experience, and it made us begin to wonder what other things, education system, and of course the medical system, and all these other things that we had all grown up. I grew up in public school, Beth, some public school, but all of a sudden we began to question all those things. And it's true, once you make one dive off, and now my wife is there are people who follow rules. That's not my wife. If there's a rule, her immediate response is, who told you that you are the rule maker? Now she doesn't do that with me all the time. but she is, and I think that came out of this, was that, why should we be following all these things? COVID is such an example of why do we think that the government should have any control over that? And we were desperately disappointed in our church, and many churches, but the Catholic Church, that they shut down everything. You have these great saints who walk into death to help people, and we shut our doors. What an embarrassment. The church had all the churches had the possibility of demonstrating what the power of Jesus is and was, and we said we're too scared.
Wow. Amen.
Next time.
Yeah.
Next time.
Never again. Now, that's what our bishop said. Our bishop said, never again. And I wondered, do you really believe that never again? I hope that's true.
Yeah. What about you, Butch? Did you have some experiences like that?
You know, when Joel was talking about, the time to do it, someone may look at 51 years and they may think, well, that's not possible. That's insurmountable. We can't, But to look at how many of us got started, I'll just share a little bit of my own experience.
You weren't that young 51 years ago. You were like 35.
That's, Joel can do it. We've known one another for a long time. I first had a conversation with him in 1991. I'm not going to tell you a lot about what we... But I was just wet behind the ears trying to figure out farming, and I called Joel. And he was not very well known then. I think it was through New Farm, the Rodell. I think you used to write for New Farm. And so I called him up, and we were having struggles with our corn. And I said, Joel, can you help me out with our corn? He said, well, why are you growing corn? You remember that now?
I remember the accent.
So, I mean, we like cornmeal, we like to feed our animals, and he then began to share with me about perennial cultures and grass farming, and it was an epiphany. I mean, it was a revolution. But I did not grow up farming. I did not. I grew up in the suburbs. Shawn grew up on a hobby farm. These guys both had experiences I did not have. I went off to college in a shiny red Triumph Spitfire convertible. And
what happened to it?
Well, I sold it after a year. I began to there were things that began to happen in my life that I realized that's not the dream that I want to chase. And part of it was meeting my wife, Diane. And then I will agree that, when you begin to look at food, it changes things. But there's another thing, at least for Diane and I, that changed. It's when we began to have children. And we began to ask ourselves the question, what kind of a culture do we want these children to be raised in? What can we do to give them what they need? My family, I appreciate my dad and my mother a great deal, but, the tsunami of the 60s and all that happened, it destroyed families. My family, I remember when the first divorce happened in our family, it was eye-opening. I just didn't think that was possible. And you begin to question these things, and you want something more for your children. And so that was a real changer for us. And then you begin to make choices on the basis of that love for your children. It came time to home educate. My wife's father was her high school principal at a very large high school in Texas. And her whole family were all public educators. And so 40 years ago, when we decided to homeschool, it was like a slap in the face. It was very difficult. And it was in Texas at the time, there was a question about whether or not it was even legal. And there were stories about people's have their children being taken from them, putting in foster homes because they homeschool. That was the climate in which we began homeschooling. And so you had to be very intentional, and you had to have a faith to make that decision that you were going to homeschool your children. And that just carries on through in all the decisions. There are decisions that you make. And a decision, you look at that word, it means a cutting off. It's an incision. And so we made those decisions to cut off. But what joy. It led us on a path to where we're at now. And like Joel, like Shawn, our children are there with us. I go out in the morning with my grandson and work sheep, work cows. They're with me. They're with us a lot of the time. And so it's a real blessing, those decisions. So just as an encouragement, I will agree with what Joel said. Yes, maybe 20 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, but you can start today. People ask me, they take some of our classes, And they said, well, I live in an apartment. I don't. I said, well, start growing things in pots on your patio, on the patio of your apartment, or at least get a worm farm.
Pot gardens are legal most places.
Oh boy. We can be economically sustainable in other ways. But, or start a worm farm. Start something to begin to understand and be involved, become relational, begin to relate with things around you, your children, your environment. So,
this fall, we are hosting in our concert hall a homemaker conference. They did it last year for 2 days. It's all women sort of rediscovering or discovering the role of wife and mother and women in the home. And it was an incredible weekend, and I was one of just, Shawn was there, his wife was speaking, and we pretty much cried all the way through.
I had to talk like this while I was there.
Yeah, you did. But the apron looked good on you. But anyway, it was an incredible weekend, and it was very clear that we needed to create a men's version of that conference. And so this year, on October 19th and 20th, I think, is the Homemaker Conference.
I'm going to talk like this when I'm there now.
Now you can be part of this one. The following weekend, we are hosting a Homebuilder Conference, which was originally going to be called a Husbandry Conference, but it sort of morphed into this idea that we want to do home restoration with hearts. And that's really what we're talking about here, all of us together. Shawn and I and Joel will be here in Rory Groves that weekend. So if you're interested in coming, we'd love for you to sign up and come. And Butch, he just found out about it, and now he's coming. He doesn't know it yet. He hasn't told his wife, Diane, but we're so excited. Thank you. Thank you, Diane. We love you guys. But this panel is really built around this idea of we men play a particular role within this homesteading and the home, and that's what we really want to celebrate. We want to encourage other men. Joel, would you mind talking about husbandry? Because you're famous for the husbandry you do outside of the home. You're really well known for that. But it can't just be that. Could you talk about how those things work together a little bit?
Well, we have all these young people, and they come from all over the country, and we spend a lot of time developing principles for harmonious living. They come in, many times have never met each other, and suddenly dump them into a communal living situation. The girls have their quarters, guys have theirs, but I say now we probably put as much time, it takes as much time and effort and energy to maintain harmonious sweetness relationally with our young people who come as it did to develop the prototypes they're learning about. And so we do a lot of leadership training. When you have a criticism, how does it get presented? Where does it go? Where's the chain of command? All those kinds of things. Those are really critical because we go through essentially what a normal workplace would take about 10 years to develop. As far as quirks and well, she always does this, or that bothers me. All the little things in a workplace, all that gets compressed into about 2 weeks at our place because they're living together, eating together, sleeping together, and they're just together 24/7. And so when you take up workplace time of interaction with somebody, we're actually compressing about 10 years of relational bumps into 2 weeks. And so it's a real pressure cooker, but certainly, we've learned a lot, and it would I would be very remiss if I didn't point out that Daniel, some of you I'm sure have heard him today here talk. He is actually way better at this than I am. He's on the management spectrum. I'm on the visionary spectrum. And so one of the things that's freed us up is to actually come together and make written job descriptions for us, including all of us family members, so that we can empower everybody to make better decisions and we can all go do our thing. So, farming by committee is a pretty big deal. And so if we can empower, we can make multiple decisions at one time because we've given autonomy, to make those decisions. So I'm now free to do things in the community. I'm the most expendable person on the team now. And so I can go when I want to. I can visit people when I want to, visit neighbors, sit down and chat with neighbors. I can go visit, a business that we're working with. I can go brainstorm with somebody who's asking for advice in the community. And a lot of really cool developments have happened even in the last couple of years in our community, in our neighborhood, as a result of me being freed up. That means you have to delegate. That means if I come home and the team has decided to put the pliers in the shop on this wall instead of this one, I'm okay. I'm okay. I've got to trust them. There's a reason why the pliers went from that wall to this wall. This takes submission. And so I don't like to submit very much. Our public relations, Wendy, our polyface mouthpiece, she calls Teresa, my wife. We'll be 44 years this year. She looks at me with this kind of mischievous look in her eye, and she says, "You might be the head, but she's the neck." And she turns you wherever she wants to go.
On that note, Joel, talk to me, and I'd love for each of you to share. I mentioned earlier that we could have the healthiest, most beautiful vegetable and fruit growing animals, everything else. But if our family is fractured, if our marriages are going down the drain, it's a complete failure. And to me, I'm sure you guys feel this way, which is this idea that in your pursuit of your passion, your God-given passion that God has given you, clearly, if something heaven help you if Teresa's not there one day, or any of us, and that side of husbandry is really bigger than the other part. And we don't want to forget about that if we don't take care of that, the rest of this doesn't matter at all. Could you guys each speak a little bit about that?
I'll just jump in and start it back down the line so Shawn has time to have the best answer because he'll have the most time. The first guy never has a chance, it's the last guy that has the best word. I say all of the production and how-tos in the world don't make a difference if you walk in the house and there's not harmony in the home. Harmony in the home has to happen. And so traditions bear a lot of this. So I'll just be transparent that, this time of year, the mountain laurel blooms on our farm up in the mountain. And I just think the mountain laurel is one of the most amazing little, it's a hexagonal, very dainty hexagonal flower. And every year I make sure I go up and I get a nice big clump of mountain laurel. You can't buy mountain laurel in a florist shop, right? Okay, it's unique to us. It's distinctive to us. I make sure I cut a bunch of that and bring it home and put it in a jar with water. So when Teresa comes down in the morning to make breakfast, there's a fresh vase of mountain laurel flowers in the things. It's kind of one of our little things. And I think all successful marriages develop these kinds of little distinctive, just us, cool little things that we do. And I suggest, and we men, it's hard for me to take time to go up there. I'm busy. I've got chores to do. Take some pruners and some nippers, go find the thing, get it, bring it home, try to get it done before she's downstairs, and get it in the jar. But man, oh man, a little bit of that goes a long way. So I just encourage you, find those little things that make your wife brighten and invest in those things because they yield great benefits.
Amen. I know our children, our youngest is 28, so all of our children are out of the house. We have 5 boys and 2 girls. And, when you have that many children, a lot going on, it's easy to forget those things that Joel's talking about. And frankly, I probably should have done a lot more of that. But now that the children are gone, Diane and I have a lot of time to spend together. And, doing things like making the bed together. She's with me most of the time, so it's very special. And I think that's just the desire to be with one another, to love one another, to care, and to be with one another. But it goes back again to what we were talking about earlier, about it's beyond me. I mean, you can imagine what a kid going off to college in a little sports car was like, pretty self-centered, pretty selfish. And it takes something to come down off of that throne. I was thinking, I woke up this morning, and some of you this is going way back into the 60s, or maybe the 70s, a song, and it said, when I was 17, I dreamed of being king and having everything I wanted. But that was long ago, and the dream did not unfold. And now I'm the king of nothing. And I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful to be that. And my wife has been there with me all the way through.
Yes, sir.
One of the things that Beth and I have always tried to do is, I write, when I sign a book, I say farm with reckless abandon. But that actually came from marry and have family with reckless abandon. Do not think of the cost of, have as many kids as you can. Just go at family life without thinking too hard about the cost, because the reward at the end is unbelievable. And when the house went down and all the boys started coming around and everything was positioned just. Somebody said to us, it couldn't have happened to a better family. Because everything, we had a B&B, and we just walked down to the B&B, and we went into the B&B that night, and they started working on it the next day, and they were all available and wanted to do it, it really helped us come together as a family. And I do think that it was partly because we hadn't counted the cost, and we'd gone full tilt at being a family, but that the family was always the most important decision that we made. And if there was a salary raise that could come in, it was not nearly as important as the time. We would always choose more time over more money. So always that. Now, I want to hear, if you can, you're the one who has really had a family difficulty, and you're getting ready to have a beautiful new family. But I want to hear your take.
I'm the question giver. I'm also the young one. I don't know anything. What can I answer? What can I say?
I want to hear about you and family and life. You've had the biggest pain, the biggest loss of any of us.
When Joey passed away, this I'm embarrassed by this, and I'm proud. It's the weirdest thing because, when she got sick, and we traveled all over the world, all over the country and the world, singing and stuff, and when she passed away, and I remember I had to get on an airplane and fly somewhere, and I went to the airport, and we were never not together. It's like your family, you're never not together. And someone, people came up to me, and I almost had to hide because I was so self-conscious of being all by myself. And someone, they came up, and some people didn't know, and they would ask. And I was embarrassed because I would say, I didn't say, I'm so lucky my wife died. Because I knew I was capable of losing her for lesser reasons. I could have done something really stupid and been in that airport by myself. And I was given the gift of a full life. And and love all the way through. And I just remember like what a weird feeling of being proud of something like that God had given me the gift of. And so now, I mentioned this in my talk earlier, I'm given a new gift that I didn't expect. I didn't know before I met Joey, I didn't even really know how to be true and love someone when I was with them. I just wasn't good at it. I wasn't very good at it. I wasn't very honest. I wasn't any of those things a long time ago. And with Joey, she turned it around. Now, when she died, she didn't need to be present for me to love her. She didn't need to be present for me to work every day to be a better husband. That's a big work. I didn't even know how to be a husband when I was one before, when I had been married before. And so all of a sudden, I'm full, even though I'm empty. And all these years go by. So when I'm given the gift to be able to have someone else in my life, and for Indy to have a mom again, or to have a mom really for the first time and experience it, it's just this overwhelming feeling of, the end is always the beginning. And that's something, it's not really the end. The end is the beginning. The end is the spark, and it carries with you right into it. And it's an incredible gift. And so you guys have been married for I won't get that. I won't get to have 44 years. I had 14 years, and I'll get some time, but it doesn't really matter. 44 terrible years mean nothing. I'll take one.
Mine wasn't terrible.
But
Who is he looking at?
There are people out there that are suffering through, and we're not sufferers. And so I'm thankful for that. I'm going to say or ask one last thing before we open this up for questions. I think we get to stay here till 3. That's okay with everybody.
And at 3, the boys are building the barn, so I encourage everybody to go over the barn raising.
Yeah, so the timber frame raising is happening, and then last year at 3, I got to go there because they were raising a timber frame structure that was going to be, I've always dreamed of having my own writing cabin. Actually, I read Michael Pollan's book, A Place of My Own, and so not only did they raise that, and I got to help them raise it at 3 o'clock last year, then we got to build a cabin over this year, and if you haven't gone to see it, you can walk out, it's all there, and I'm just now starting to write songs. Anyway, I'd love for you to see that cabin and love for you to join the boys as they're doing that. It was neat for me to have Michael Pollan and Joel walk out there with me, kind of full circle all the way around. But what I want to say before we do questions is just this, homesteading is kind of a strange combination. Everybody is here with different feelings inside. Some people, homesteading is health. Like they're trying to find health in their bodies and their families. Some of it's hope. They're looking for hope in their life. Some of them, there's fear, and there's food insecurity, and there's other things that are driving them. Some of it's faith. What advice, or just the balance of those things? Joel and I were talking about on the drive that fear is good. This idea that the wheels could come off, and we wouldn't be surprised if they do. We're not going to live worried about it all the time. But a little bit of fear is good, just the healthiness of that. You want to start with that, Joel?
Yeah, the fear and the faith.
Yeah, fear and the faith, and just all the things that bring us here.
Yeah, fear, if a lion's chasing you, a little bit of fear is probably good. Because fear makes you run, but you can't run forever. And so I think the homesteading movement is a faith answer to embrace a stop. So you have to stop running, and then you have to stop. And what we're all here about is, so what we need to do is make sure for each of us that the fear that we see, the things that we see going on in our culture that make us fearful about the future, that we don't dwell on that, but we actually turn that into where by faith do I now put down roots? Do I now put down an anchor? Do I now stop? And what do I embrace so I can be hope and help when everything else is hopeless and helpless?
Yes, I would. In fact, I don't know, maybe this was Stephen Covey that said this, but fear is a good short-term motivator, but it's a very poor long-term behavior changer. And, it's love that changes us. that's what really, it's that faith and love, faith, hope, and love that really changes us. And you mentioned earlier, Rory, about, what is it to some different people? Is it, health and the food? Is it faith and all the, I think it's all of those things. I think there's a wholeness that at the root core we're all seeking. We want to be whole. And I have a good friend. She was actually going to hopefully speak here, but she became ill a couple of weeks ago. She's 81 years old, Dr. Kay Toombs, and she's lived with MS for 29 years. And she said, there are people that are healed, but they're not made whole. And there are some people that are not healed, and they're whole. And, affliction, all those kinds of things, it teaches us something. And so we're all trying to make the point that I think we're looking for wholeness. And so it's all of those things.
Wendell Berry, and if any of you are not reading Wendell Berry, you should all be reading Wendell Berry. Wendell Berry says the same things over and over and over again, and he doesn't ever grow tired of it, even though it would seem that there's not much effect. He just keeps saying it. But one of the most important things that he talks about is place, is your place. And everyone needs to own your place. And it was interesting for us with the house burning down. We have land that the state of Ohio calls not suitable for agriculture. And it's primarily because it's very steep and it's not very good land. We have turned it into this wonderful farm. But, so we have this opportunity. Your house burned down. The insurance is going to give you quite a bit of money. There was this wonderful GoFundMe that gave us money. Many of you gave us money. We could have cashed all that in and said, let's go buy a farm. Some more acreage. Let's go do something.
Some decent land.
Decent land, that's right. And we said, no, this is our place. This is our place. And our children are going to rebuild on our place. And we need to own place, and then we need to get other people to also join us in this. There's nobody that knows more about community than your community. And we're all trying to understand, how does community work? How do we do it? And I think a really important step is just stay. Be a sticker. Be one of those who stays here. This is my place. And then spread that. If this is my place, then you're my neighbor, and I have to start treating you like a neighbor, as opposed to this being the temporary place before I go on to the next place because I got irritated with the people who are in this place.
But we have a lot of California refugees here in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Probably some in this group.
And they need to join place.
Yeah, they need to join place.
All right, Christian. First off, let's give my friend Christian Kennedy a round of applause. He's run this tent the whole weekend. It's been wonderful. We'll do a few questions before we close up. Anybody over here? You start right there with him, maybe.
Hey, I was so lucky. My name is Mike Cimarelli. Thank you guys for this panel. I've got a big piece of property on the Piney River that I was going to break up and parcel off pieces to other families doing basically exactly what you guys are talking about. And I came here with a bunch of questions. And now I'm having a whole identity crisis, and I just want to go pray and talk to my wife.
You're welcome.
But I'm going to have more questions, and I would specifically love to come back after some prayer. And how can I chat with some of you guys in the next day or so? I mean, I'm dead serious. I would like to.
Well, maybe come up afterwards.
Come up after.
Yeah, come up afterwards. Do you have a question, sir? Yes, sir. Right here's one. Everybody else get your questions ready if you have one.
You all mentioned faith, and then you actually mentioned COVID in your conversation. How have you each made the decision to either integrate with an existing church for your faith journey or create a cell church, or however you've solved that issue in your respective climates? I'd be curious for that thought process.
I'm Catholic, and I could never leave the Eucharist. The Eucharist is the most important thing in my life. And so that answers that question.
Butch, you have something?
Maybe you could rephrase it again, or just.
Do you still participate in a larger church, or because it was different enough, you set up your own home?
His has not changed. They didn't have COVID at his place. No, I just mean in the sense of their church. Their church is their community, and it's like it's whole, and you know, not that they didn't have some bumps and stuff, but you didn't have to come up with another route, right?
No, sir. It was integrated. Yes, it was integrated. We're integrated, and we have been. Our church and our community are the same.
So, are you done?
Maybe.
Depends on what I say, right? So I might be the most similar to everybody here in that we go to a non-abominational.
You know, when he starts laughing, it makes him.
It's contagious. Community fellowship group. So we're we're pretty independent as far as that goes, but we're fairly conventional as far as, you know, American Protestant evangelical type churches are, groups are. I try not to use the word church because we are the church, and I think we've I'm gonna get off my rabbit trail. So our family being Mavericks, we've been in several different groups throughout my childhood and growing up time. And so I've been, I'm sure some of you have been through church splits and divisions, and, you know, this is welcome to American churchiology. And so where we are now, and have been there now for 20 years, I guess, we've landed at this place, but for the first time when we went there, we were out of 10 years of home churching, and I was convinced that this is the way to go. And I'm still not too far from it, but what I learned in the home church movement was that nobody learned to submit, and this thing grew to 70 people. It was a pretty big group. Lots of families, all homeschoolers, of course, all Mavericks, all loose cannons, all have been endowed with direct revelation. This is the way it's supposed to be. And today, of those 7 families, I think 5 are divorced. Nobody learned to submit. And I did most of the preaching because I was kind of the most, gifted communicator in the group. But when that all fell apart, broke up, and we looked around, searched around, by that time I was getting a little bit famous and doing a lot of traveling and speaking around. And for the first time, we joined a group where I was not in any kind of leadership position. I'd been elder, Sunday school teacher, stuff. And we went and we attended a year where I couldn't sing. All I did was cry because I knew nobody knew me and nobody was judging me because nobody knew me. And the freedom of anonymity, of knowing, is anybody, okay. It was a year. It was a year of just crying through worship service because I knew nobody was, he listens to too much news, or his wife doesn't wear a dress all the time, or, there's, a million things. And anyway, then once we kind of got over that, then I started feeling guilty. Then I went back into guilt syndrome that I'm not teaching Sunday school. I'm not an elder. I'm not, and of course, like so many of these, we've got 50 programs. You've got the nursing home. You've got Awana. You've got VBS, Vacation Bible School. You've got prayer meeting. You've got Sunday night. You've got Sunday morning. Are you okay? And the way you advance in the church hierarchy is you show up every time the doors open. And during house church time, I came to the reality that I don't want Sunday to be my busiest day of the week. That's not what it's for. And so we had eliminated Sunday school back during house church, and I wasn't going to go back to it, and I wasn't going to make Sunday my sweatiest, hardest, scramble around, hurriest, frenzied day of the week. And so now I'm guilty because I'm not there every time the church doors open. I'm not there giving and giving and giving. And I had this wonderful time over 2 or 3 months where, God didn't speak audibly, but it became very, very clear to me, this is your ministry. This is your ministry. And I was freed. I was freed from the guilt of not giving enough, not putting out enough, because God had given me a worldwide community to minister to. And during that time, as I was going through this kind of freeing up period spiritually, I would go and I would, travel. I would, fly to places. And of course, somebody's always going to pick me up at the airport. And I'm telling you what, it was just every single, and this is in the day when there wasn't a homestead movement. So I'm speaking at local food conferences, which tend to be greeny, weeny, liberal, right? Sustainable ag conferences, bunch of organic tree huggers, earth muffins, and
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
no,
We haven't said that one time in this whole talk. We need to.
just commie pinkos. I mean,
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
And over that period of time, it doesn't happen as much today, but during that period, during my struggle, every single time the person or family or whatever dispatched from the group to pick me up at the airport was the only Christian in that group. There were Messianic Jews. There were it was unbelievable. And God started to minister and confirm with me. And there were people with marriage problems. There were people dealing with church problems. There were all sorts of things. And it was just like God was just throwing into my lap opportunities to be ministered to. Here's somebody that's receptive, that's ready to hear. And I've sent you for them to let you know I still need you in my field. And all I need is for you to be faithful. And so here we are. I'm still not an elder. I don't teach Sunday school. Okay? I have become the reserve pastor. When Jim's gone, he's asked me to preach. So I do that several times a year. But that itch is gone. That need is gone. That enough is gone. And I'm able to completely be at freedom spiritually and at peace with this mission. And that's just fine.
Yes, sir. Well, you are an elder. You're my elder. All of you, you all have ministries. I mean, for sure, God's put you where you are on purpose. I heard this poem a number of years ago, and I've never forgot it. And I think about it a lot, but I want to say it to you guys because I want you to realize the ministry that God's given you in front of all of us. And He's given each of us a ministry too. But I'd rather see a sermon than hear one any day. I'd rather you walk with me than merely point the way. The eye is a more ready student than ever was the ear, and advice is often confusing, but example is crystal clear. And you guys are such great examples. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you, guys. My name is Clint. I have a question for Butch. You've been in this community for, you say, a season of time.
Can I stop and just go ahead and use the word cult? We'll just say that quick. The reason is because the second it starts to smell and look anything different, that's the easiest way to dismiss anything that doesn't look like anything else. So anyway, go ahead. Sorry about that, Butch.
I appreciate you saying that.
Hold the microphone closer to your mouth if you don't mind.
When your season of time on this earth is done, okay, which is, I hope, a long time from now, your legacy in your community, how would you like for you yourself to, or you to be remembered by those your people around you?
He was a loving and faithful brother.
Yes, sir.
I just know that this has been something that you've been thinking about, is what, because you've got a community that is having people who are starting to pass on. And you really understand community, and you really understand that next step. And that answer is just perfect.
Any more questions? Back behind you there, Christian.
Howdy there, Brian Brenton, Shelbyville, Tennessee. I was just going to ask a kind of a broad question. I know that you've spoke about the wheels falling off, and that's something that very well could happen. I think Christ has given us the narrow way, and we found it. We found the narrow way. It is through making our communities and doing this. But Joel talked about this group of men that get to their 70s that are looking at a black hole that either maybe their sons or daughters that they maybe didn't have or they did have that aren't following in their footsteps. Well, there's an entire another generation that's on the other spectrum. They don't have children at all. Some of them aren't even Christian, but a large majority of men do not have children, especially in this country. But I mean, it's an international problem. There is a population collapse that we're facing coming forward, and I would just ask what can be done.
One thing that we have seen when we go out and do farm consults is that we're seeing multi-generational farms, or people, the older people have the land and they have the money, and they are partnering with the young people. Exactly what Joel's talking about. And that's what needs to happen, is that we need to do a lot more partnering with each other and really working together. The community are ways that I hope that we're working together, but really is kind of at the crisis times that you really feel community. But on a day-to-day basis, it would be fabulous if young people were partnered with older people were not put in old folks' homes, but that everybody started saying, because the old people have so much to give, the young people have so much energy, it could be a win-win-win.
Are you saying, and maybe I misread you, were you saying more to do with the population problem in the sense that what we should do about the fact that we don't want to have children, nobody's having children? Yeah, they're just that idea that there are no children coming along, way less than there's ever been before.
Well, we know what to do about that. Have children.
Says the Catholic.
I guess I'm the underperformer in this group. We only had 2.
Yes, sir.
So that's actually about 0.2 away from replacement, 2. But yeah, people do have issues. I think one of the problems, the single biggest problem, is that children in our culture are now viewed as liabilities. They talk about how much it costs to raise a child. Well, it used to be you wanted children because you grew your labor force, on the farm, on the homestead. And so children were considered an asset. And I would just suggest that a culture is absolutely bankrupt emotionally and spiritually when it views children as a liability and not an asset.
All right, we have time for one more question, maybe two over here. Can you work? Okay, wherever you want to go, Christian.
Not so much a question, but a comment. Rory, I wanted to thank you.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I'm Kevin McFarland from Brooks, Georgia. This is my wife, Debbie. She's my second wife. I lost my first wife after 14 years. We're Catholic, have 6 children. But I just wanted to comment, after all I've learned, we're 3 years into this, removed from suburban onto 11 acres. And out of all the different talks and classes that I've been through yesterday and today, this tops them all. Thank you.
Thank you.
You didn't go to the women's conference. That one was really good.
I just got a compliment. This is my wife and I's first time here, and it's amazing, the environment. You look around, and most people in restaurants don't even wipe off their table nowadays. And you look on the ground around here, and you don't see trash everywhere. And we homeschooled our kids, and I'm the baby of 9. So, but the kids not marrying nowadays, they are scared to death because you look around, you see train wrecks everywhere.
Yes, sir.
We're going to get a question eventually, Rory.
I don't have a question.
Maybe not.
I just want to say and take time, I'm sure from everybody, I'm going to speak for everybody here. Thank you to you for putting on this program. And thank you to the 3 of you for coming. Joel, we've had you out at our farm. We spoke several times. We spoke to you about cows. And Rory, it's just what God has done for all you folks, you gentlemen, the other people around here, to a community of us who want to live a better life, and that you've opened up your home, your farm, your community to us. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. It's our blessing. Richard, right there. That's one of my friends.
Hey, you didn't talk about porch time when you were talking about your support group, but that's a different story. Anyway, that's how I know Rory. Mine is specifically for you, Joel. So you talked to your Green Beret buddies, and they talked about this EMP, and I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but we had a tornado that hit Murray County here, and people lost power for a time. Are you guys doing anything on your farm, or any of you guys do anything for power? Because if you're going to pump water out to your cattle, how are you doing that, or what are you trying? You doing diesel, storing it, wind power? Talk to that a little bit, if you don't mind.
Oh, water. So if you've ever been to our, power. Well, you talk about water as being the number one thing you need power for. So what we've got, over the years, we've built ponds up on high ground, permaculture style. We have 12 miles of buried 1.25 inch water line that gives us 70-pound pressure water from millions of gallons of water stored on high ground around the farm. So as long as gravity works, we got water. And when gravity quits working, I'm out of here. We do have solar, 3 on different buildings. So we have solar panels. We heat with wood. Let me say this about wheels falling off. I've been. I know we're about. I know you're washing time, Rory.
It's okay.
I've been contacted in the last 30 months by 5 billionaires, not millionaires, billionaires. We think the wheels are going to fall off. Can you help us find a safe place? I call it an agrarian bunker. Okay? That's what they're after. One of them asked me, what does wheels falling off to you mean? I said, well, I don't really have an answer. Give me a week. Let me talk to my team here. We'll brainstorm. We'll get back to you. And so we did. We talked about it as a team. And what we came up with was 3 things. Now, you can make a list of 20, okay? But you get lost in 20. You gotta kind of keep it low. What we came up with, you can't get fuel. You can't get grain, and you can't get electricity. So no electricity, no gas station, no grain. Okay? And what we realized was that if that happened, things in our nation would become so chaotic, barbarian, we can't even imagine what that would look like. So there's no sense in actually preparing for that scenario, because almost never is a crisis as worse as you can imagine. It's somewhere in south of the worst thing you can imagine. So we just continue slugging along. We've got a lot of food stored. We finally bought a freeze dryer, and we're running freeze dryer a lot, and we're making pouches. I'm working with a group, a couple of women who are developing a food assurance program. They've been in the insurance business all their lives, and we're creating a food assurance program that you can pay in a premium and have and be guaranteed food for this. So there are things that we're kind of meddling in this, but I don't live in everything's going to go crazy, but I think it's part of our responsibility to at least be prepared enough. I'll tell you this: if you talk to people who live in this arena, you will find that the golden time period to punch through a major thing is 3 months. Because in 3 months, innovation, adaptation, things take over, and it's a different world. So in the worst case scenario, 3 months. 3 months is not that intimidating. You can have enough food stored in the pantry for 3 months, unfrozen. That's why you should can meat, freeze dry some stuff. Don't depend on your freezers, but get a stash of other things, and so that's kind of where I am. We've done a lot to take care of the livestock. I can tell you this: we wouldn't raise the number of chickens we do. We would go to very much an herbivore stock. So we've got all of our chargers now are gradually converted over to solar chargers, so we don't need power to do that. Again, if it went to that point, I think our minds, we can't even wrap our heads around what the culture would look like in that kind of scenario. So we don't have to prepare for that apocalypse, but probably something about 20% or say 80, 75% less, we should probably be ready for. Yeah.
Don't forget that Shawn's sons have a timber frame raising here and starting in just a few minutes, kind of out there in the demonstration area. It's out that way. And then if you're interested, as I mentioned, the Homebuilder Conference, we'd love to have you join us. We'll all go a lot deeper. Please give a round of applause to Joel Salatin, Butch Tindell, Shawn Dougherty. I'll leave you with one more thought. I read this quote recently from Mother Teresa. If you want to change the world, go home and love your family. Blessings to you all.